Hello, Langston. I'm glad you were able to make it.
Thank you, Shelby. The traffic was bad, and I followed 3 detours, but I finally found my way. But anyways, let's not waste any time.
Well, thank you, again. I am very interested in writing about you. I've been reviewing your poetry and I couldn't help but want to share information about you.
What would you like to start with first?
Well, Langston, let's start with the basics. How about when and where you were born, the name of your parents, where you grew up, and all the jazz?
I was born February 1st, 1902, as James Mercer Langston Hughes. My parents' names are Caroline Mercer Langston and James Nathaniel Hughes. I was raised mainly by my grandmother in Lawrence, Kansas. You see, my mother was traveling seeking employment. But when grandmother had passed away, I then lived with family friends for 2 years.
Oh wow, that must have been difficult. It is always nice to have friends that can be there for you.
You are right, Shelby. I attended grammar school in Lincoln, Illinois, and I was elected class poet because of the stereotype that African Americans have rhythm. I then later attended high school in Cleveland, Ohio. I wrote for the school newspaper, edited the yearbook, started to write short stories and poetry. After graduation, I spent a year at Columbia University.
Oh, really? I went to Columbia University as well.
Well, I wasn't there for long. In 1924, I moved to Washington, D.C. and published my first book of poetry, The Weary Blues, which was published by Alfred A. Knopf in 1926. I then decided to finally finish my college education at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania 3 years after the publishing of my first book. And in 1930, I won the Harmon Gold Medal for my book Not Without Laughter.
Wow. 22 years old and already getting published. That's amazing. Who influenced your writing?
Early influences were Walt Whitman, Carl Sandburg, Paul Laurence Dunbar, and Claude McKay. Devotion to black music led me to jazz and blues, which I used in my poetry. My emphasis on lower-class black life led to attacks on me in the press. While I was finishing college, I was being supported by a wealthy white woman, Charlotte Mason, who convinced me to write the novel Not Without Laughter.
Very interesting. I know you've written plays. Could you emphasize a little bit on that?
After the play Mulatto opened on Broadway in 1935, I wrote other plays including comedies and historical. Spent several months in Europe, and returned home in 1938 to found the Harlem Suitcase Theatre, where I staged a drama, Don't You Want to Be Free?, which had several of my poems blended with black nationalism, blues, and socialist exhortation. That same year, a socialist organization published a pamphlet of my radial verse, A New Song.
I wish I could have seen one of those. What type of things were you doing during the war?
As the brave young men and women of this country strived to better the lives of Americans, I was rooting them on behind the scenes. Although I do not fully agree with the idea of war, during World War II, I wrote a weekly column in the Chicago Defender from 1942 to 1962. The highlight was a fictional man named Jesse B. Semple. Simple became my most celebrated creation. This character allowed me to discuss serious racial issues. After the war, I began to receive harassment from right-wing forces due to my ties to the left. I protested against being a communist, but in 1953 I was publicly humiliated by Senator McCarthy, who made me testify in D.C. about my politics. Shortly after, McCarthy was discredited and I was free to write about my years in the Soviet Union.
I am glad we are now getting to the point that we can write as we wish and don't have to get everything okayed. Well, I've got to be going soon, but we need to get together again so we can interview some more. How about another question before we go?
Or, Shelby. Not only am I a good writer, but I enjoy talking too. But that's all right. What would you like to know?
Well, I know you were around the New York area during the Harlem Renaissance. Can you elaborate on your actions during this time?
Wonderful question. I believe had become an integral part of the art scene in Harlem. I have been told that in many ways I have defined the spirit of the age, from a literary point of view. The Big C, the first volume of autobiography, provides such a crucial account of the era from my own experiences, and it's been said to be a key player of what we know about the Harlem Renaissance.
Well, thank you again, Langston, for coming out. I really look forward to meeting with you again, but I'm sorry, I must be going.
Thank you as well.
I'll be in touch.